We often look for safety in other people or circumstances, but real stability begins within. This talk is about learning how to become a place of calm for yourself, especially when life feels overwhelming. Not by avoiding pain, but by responding to it with understanding, boundaries, and care. Because healing starts when you stop breaking yourself to survive. Many people believe that safety comes from the outside, the right relationship, the right job, financial stability, or someone strong enough to protect them from disappointment and loss. While these external factors can reduce stress, they are never fully within our control. People change, circumstances shift, and life will inevitably deliver moments of uncertainty. When our sense of safety depends entirely on what is outside us, we remain vulnerable to feeling constantly on edge, waiting for the next thing to go wrong. Internal safety is not about pretending the world is harmless, it is about knowing that when something hurts, you have the capacity to support yourself through it. Becoming a safe place for yourself means learning how to respond when emotions surge rather than trying to eliminate those emotions altogether. Fear, sadness, anger, and grief are not signs that something is wrong with you, they are signals that something matters. When these emotions are met with self-criticism, avoidance, or pressure to be stronger, the nervous system stays activated for longer. Over time, this can create a pattern where distress feels unbearable, not because the emotion itself is too much, but because you don't trust yourself to handle it. Internal safety grows when you begin to meet discomfort with curiosity instead of judgment. This process often starts with awareness. Noticing what happens inside you when things feel unsafe is key. Do you tense your body, rush to fix the problem, shut down, or tell yourself that you shouldn't feel this way? These reactions usually developed for good reasons, often as ways to cope in environments where support was inconsistent or unavailable. Acknowledging that these patterns once served a purpose helps reduce shame and opens the door to change. You are not broken for having them, they are learned responses, and learned responses can be updated. Internal safety is built through repetition, not insight alone. It is created in small moments when you follow through on caring actions, even when you don't feel calm yet. This might look like pausing to breathe before reacting, reminding yourself that feelings rise and fall, or allowing yourself to rest without earning it. Each time you respond with steadiness rather than panic, you send your nervous system a message that distress is survivable. Over time, this changes how threatening emotional discomfort feels. Another important element is how you speak to yourself during difficulty. Self-talk acts like an internal environment. If that environment is harsh, dismissive, or demanding, your body stays in a state of alert. When your inner voice becomes more supportive and realistic, it doesn't remove pain, but it reduces the additional suffering layered on top of it. Statements such as "this is hard, and I can take it one step at a time," are not empty affirmations, they are grounding reminders that help anchor you when emotions feel overwhelming. Internal safety also involves knowing your limits. Pushing yourself beyond capacity may look like resilience, but it often leads to burnout and emotional collapse. Learning when to step back, say no, or ask for help is part of becoming reliable to yourself. It builds trust. When you honor your limits consistently, your mind and body learn that you will not abandon them under pressure. For those who did not grow up with a stable sense of safety, this work can feel unfamiliar and uncomfortable at first. That discomfort does not mean you are doing it wrong. It means you are learning a new way of relating to yourself. Safety is not something you suddenly achieve. It is something you practice. With time, the goal is not to stop life from hurting you, but to know deep down that when it does, you will not turn against yourself. Many people equate safety with being strong enough that nothing affects them. They believe that if they could just toughen up, stay positive, or stop feeling so deeply, they would finally be protected from pain. This belief often develops early, especially in environments where vulnerability was misunderstood or discouraged. When emotional expression was met with criticism, dismissal, or pressure to move on, learning to suppress feelings can seem like the only way to survive. Over time, this creates the idea that being unbreakable is the goal, and that needing support is a personal failure rather than a human reality. The problem with striving to be unbreakable is that it turns natural emotional responses into threats. Sadness becomes something to hide, fear becomes something to fight, and exhaustion becomes something to push through. This constant resistance places the nervous system under strain. Instead of creating safety, it increases tension and leaves people feeling disconnected from themselves. True safety does not come from the absence of pain, but from knowing how to respond when pain arrives without escalating it or turning it inward. Being safe does not require you to withstand everything without impact. It requires flexibility. Emotional resilience is less like a wall and more like a shock absorber. It allows you to feel the weight of an experience, bend under pressure, and gradually return to balance. When you give yourself permission to be remembered as someone who adapts rather than someone who endures silently, emotional experiences become less overwhelming. You stop measuring your worth by how little you feel, and start evaluating it by how well you care for yourself when feelings show up. One of the most damaging myths around strength is that breaking means failure. In reality, moments of breaking often signal that something important needs attention. Emotional overwhelm can be a message that your needs have gone unmet for too long, that boundaries were crossed, or that you have been carrying more than your share. Ignoring these signals does not make them disappear. It simply delays the moment when they demand to be heard more forcefully. Learning to listen earlier, with compassion, reduces the intensity of those moments. Responding to pain in a healthy way means slowing down rather than speeding up. It involves acknowledging what is happening instead of pushing past it. This can feel counterintuitive in a culture that rewards productivity and composure, but emotional regulation depends on allowing the body to process experience fully. Naming emotions, grounding yourself physically, and offering reassurance rather than criticism helps the nervous system settle. You are not trying to eliminate discomfort, but to guide yourself through it. Self-compassion plays a critical role here. When something hurts, many people instinctively blame themselves for feeling affected. They might tell themselves they are weak, dramatic, or incapable. This inner attack compounds the original pain. Safety grows when that voice shifts from accusation to understanding. Speaking to yourself with the same tone you would use with someone you care about does not make you fragile, it makes recovery faster and more sustainable. Learning that you don't need to be unbreakable also changes how you relate to others. You become more willing to ask for help, to set limits, and to be honest about your capacity. This does not make you dependent, it makes you realistic. Interdependence is a healthy part of human functioning, and allowing yourself to lean when needed reduces the pressure to carry everything alone. Over time, safety becomes less about avoiding emotional injury and more about trusting your ability to respond wisely when injury occurs. You stop fearing moments of vulnerability because you know they are temporary and manageable. The aim is not to harden yourself against life, but to develop the skills that allow you to stay present with it, even when it hurts, without losing your sense of self or worth. The way you speak to yourself during moments of stress, failure, or uncertainty has a powerful influence on how safe or threatened you feel internally. Self-talk is not just a stream of thoughts. It acts as an internal environment that shapes emotional and physiological responses. When that inner voice is harsh, critical, or dismissive, the nervous system interprets it as danger, even if no external threat is present. This can intensify anxiety, prolong distress, and make emotional recovery harder. Many people underestimate how much their internal dialogue contributes to their sense of safety and stability. Self-critical self-talk often develops as a learned response rather than a personal flaw. For some, it mirrors voices from the past that demanded perfection, minimized emotions, or linked worth to performance. Over time, these messages become internalized and feel like objective truth rather than habits of thinking. In stressful moments, this voice may appear automatically, telling you that you are overreacting, failing, or not good enough. Although it may feel familiar or even motivating, it rarely leads to calm or effective problem-solving. Instead, it keeps the body in a heightened state of alert. When distress is met with criticism, the emotional wound deepens. The original difficulty is joined by shame, fear of inadequacy, or a sense of being alone with the problem. This layered suffering is often what makes experiences feel unbearable. In contrast, supportive self-talk does not remove the difficulty, but it reduces the additional pressure placed on the nervous system. Simple, grounding statements can signal safety, reminding the body that although something is hard, it is manageable. Changing self-talk is not about forcing positivity or denying reality. Telling yourself that everything is fine, when it clearly is not, can feel invalidating and increase frustration. Effective self-talk is realistic and compassionate. It acknowledges the difficulty without exaggerating it, and offers reassurance without false promises. Phrases that recognize effort, allow uncertainty, and emphasize process rather than outcome help create internal steadiness. Over time, this shifts the relationship you have with your own emotions. Becoming aware of your self-talk patterns is an important first step. Many people are so used to their inner commentary that they don't notice it until it is pointed out. Pausing to observe what you say to yourself during moments of challenge can reveal recurring themes, such as self-blame, catastrophizing, or dismissal. These patterns often intensify when you are tired, stressed, or overwhelmed. Recognizing them without judgment allows you to intervene more gently. Replacing harsh self-talk does not mean silencing it completely. That voice often arises in an attempt to protect you from future pain or failure, even if it goes about it in an unhelpful way. A more effective approach is to respond to it. You can acknowledge the concern behind the criticism while choosing a calmer, more supportive response. This creates an internal dialogue rather than an internal attack, which feels safer and more stabilizing. Consistent changes in self-talk influence emotional regulation over time. When your inner voice becomes more steady and understanding, emotional reactions tend to soften more quickly. You may still feel upset, disappointed, or anxious, but those emotions pass through rather than overwhelming you. This builds trust in your ability to cope, which reduces fear around emotional experiences in general. Supportive self-talk also affects behavior. When you speak to yourself with respect, you are more likely to take care of your needs, set boundaries, and recover after setbacks instead of giving up. It encourages persistence without punishment. This creates a feedback loop where kinder self-talk leads to healthier choices, which then reinforce a sense of competence and safety. Ultimately, the voice you use with yourself becomes the lens through which you experience difficulty. When that voice is calm, fair, and compassionate, it becomes a form of protection. It doesn't prevent challenges, but it changes how those challenges are felt and processed. Over time, learning to speak to yourself in this way can transform moments of distress into opportunities for stability rather than sources of further harm. Many people struggle with the idea of boundaries because they associate them with conflict, rejection, or selfishness. They worry that setting limits will hurt others, damage relationships, or make them appear unkind. This belief often comes from early experiences where needs were overlooked or where expressing discomfort led to negative consequences. As a result, boundaries can feel unsafe, even though they are essential for emotional well-being. Without them, people may overextend themselves, suppress resentment, or remain in situations that gradually erode their sense of self. Boundaries are not about controlling other people's behavior, they are about clarifying what you are responsible for and what you are not. When boundaries are unclear, emotional labor increases, and stress builds. You may find yourself taking on others' feelings, fixing problems that are not yours to solve, or tolerating treatment that leaves you depleted. Over time, this can lead to burnout and emotional withdrawal. Rather than protecting connection, the absence of boundaries often damages it. Setting a boundary is an act of self-respect. It communicates that your time, energy, and emotional capacity have value. This does not mean you care less about others. It means you care enough to engage honestly rather than from a place of obligation or fear. Healthy boundaries allow relationships to function on consent rather than endurance. They create space for genuine connection, instead of quiet resentment. It is important to understand that discomfort often accompanies boundary setting, especially at first. Feeling guilty or anxious does not mean the boundary is wrong. It usually means you are doing something unfamiliar. If you are used to prioritizing others at your own expense, choosing yourself can trigger fear of rejection or conflict. This emotional reaction is a normal adjustment response, not evidence that you are being unkind. Learning to tolerate this discomfort is part of building emotional safety. Boundaries also provide clarity. When expectations are unspoken, misunderstandings are more likely. Clearly communicating limits helps others understand how to relate to you and reduces guesswork. This clarity can feel confronting initially, but it often leads to more stable interactions over time. People may not always like your boundaries, but that does not make them unreasonable. Their reaction belongs to them, not to you. Respecting your own boundaries reinforces trust with yourself. Each time you notice your limits and act in accordance with them, you send yourself the message that your needs matter. This strengthens internal safety and reduces the tendency to seek validation through overgiving. When you consistently override your limits, you weaken that trust and increase internal tension. Boundaries help align your actions with your values and capacity. Boundaries are not fixed rules, they change depending on context, energy levels, and life circumstances. Allowing flexibility does not mean abandoning them. It means checking in with yourself regularly and adjusting as needed. This responsiveness prevents boundaries from becoming rigid or punitive. The goal is not to build walls, but to create doors that you can open and close intentionally. In relationships, boundaries actually increase intimacy when they are respected. They allow people to show up more fully because they are not protecting themselves from overload or resentment. When you are clear about what you can offer, your presence becomes more genuine. This creates a foundation of mutual respect, rather than unspoken expectation. Learning to set boundaries takes practice. It involves noticing when you feel drained, uncomfortable, or resentful, and treating those signals as information rather than something to push through. Over time, responding to these signals becomes more natural. You begin to recognize that saying no is not a rejection of the other person, but a commitment to your own well-being. Through this process, boundaries become a way of maintaining connection without losing yourself. Many people expect healing to feel dramatic or transformative, as though one insight, breakthrough conversation, or major life change will suddenly make everything better. This expectation can be discouraging, because real healing rarely works that way. Emotional recovery is usually quiet and repetitive, built through small actions that don't feel significant in the moment. When progress is measured only by intense shifts, it can seem as though nothing is changing, even when important groundwork is being laid. Healing through small, repeatable moments means focusing on what you do consistently, rather than what you do perfectly. The nervous system learns through repetition. Each time you respond to stress with a slightly healthier choice, you reinforce a new pattern. These choices might be as simple as pausing before reacting, getting enough rest, or acknowledging your feelings instead of dismissing them. Individually, they may seem insignificant, but together they gradually reshape how safe and manageable life feels. One of the reasons small steps matter is that they are sustainable. Big changes often require high energy and motivation, which fluctuate depending on stress, mood, and circumstances. When healing depends on intense effort, setbacks are more likely. Small actions, on the other hand, can be maintained even during difficult periods. They allow progress to continue without overwhelming your system, which is especially important when you are already emotionally taxed. Consistency also builds trust with yourself. Each time you follow through on a supportive action, you demonstrate reliability. This strengthens internal confidence and reduces self-doubt. Over time, you begin to believe that you can take care of yourself, not because you never struggle, but because you keep showing up in manageable ways. This sense of trust is foundational for emotional stability and resilience. It is common to underestimate the impact of these repeated moments because change happens gradually. The brain is more sensitive to sudden shifts than to slow improvements, so progress can go unnoticed. You may still experience difficult emotions or familiar triggers and assume that nothing has improved. In reality, the difference may be in how long those emotions last, how intensely they are felt, or how quickly you recover. These subtle shifts are signs that healing is taking place. Small practices also reduce the pressure to get it right. When healing is framed as an ongoing process rather than a destination, mistakes and setbacks become part of learning rather than proof of failure. Missing a day, reacting imperfectly, or feeling overwhelmed does not undo progress. What matters is returning to supportive habits when you can. This flexible approach prevents all or nothing thinking, which often stalls recovery. Another benefit of small, repeatable actions is that they increase self-awareness. Regular check-ins with your body and emotions help you notice patterns earlier. You become more attuned to early signs of stress or exhaustion and can respond before they escalate. This preventative aspect of healing reduces the intensity of future difficulties and helps maintain balance over time. Healing in this way also respects your current capacity. It acknowledges that you are working within real-life constraints and emotional limits. Rather than pushing yourself to be better faster, you focus on being kinder and more consistent. This reduces self-criticism and creates a gentler relationship with growth. Over time, these small moments accumulate. What once required conscious effort becomes more automatic. Healthier responses replace old habits, not because you force them, but because they were practiced often enough to feel familiar. This is how lasting change occurs. Healing does not announce itself loudly. It shows up in the quiet ways you respond to everyday challenges, in the steadiness that gradually replaces chaos, and in the growing sense that you can handle what comes next. Many people grow up without a consistent sense of emotional safety. This can happen in environments where caregivers were unpredictable, unavailable, overwhelmed, or critical, even if harm was never intentional. When safety is missing early on, the nervous system adapts by staying alert, scanning for threat, or learning to minimize needs in order to maintain connection. These adaptations can be effective in childhood, but they often carry forward into adulthood, shaping how people relate to themselves and others long after the original circumstances have changed. When you have never experienced safety as something stable, the idea of becoming a safe place for yourself can feel unrealistic or unfamiliar. You may assume that safety must come from outside sources, or believe that you are incapable of providing it for yourself. This belief is understandable, but it is not permanent. The brain remains capable of learning new patterns throughout life. Safety is not only something that is received, it is something that can be developed through experience, practice, and repetition. Learning to be a safe place for yourself begins with understanding how your past shaped your present responses. Hypervigilance, emotional withdrawal, people-pleasing, or difficulty trusting others are not character flaws, they are protective strategies formed in response to earlier environments. Recognizing this helps replace self-blame with compassion. When you see these patterns as adaptations rather than failures, it becomes easier to work with them rather than against them. Creating internal safety involves consistency. The nervous system learns what to expect based on repeated experiences. Each time you respond to distress with patience instead of criticism, you create a new reference point. This might involve soothing your body through breathing, grounding yourself in the present, or allowing emotions to exist without trying to suppress them. These moments gradually teach your system that it does not need to stay on high alert all the time. For those without a model of safety, this process can feel slow and uncertain. You may doubt whether what you are doing is working, especially when old reactions resurface. This does not mean progress has stopped. Learning safety is not about eliminating past responses, but about expanding your range of responses. Over time, supportive reactions become more accessible, even if protective ones still appear under stress. Being a safe place for yourself also means allowing yourself to need support from others without feeling ashamed. Internal safety does not require complete independence. It means having enough stability within yourself to seek connection, without losing your sense of worth. When you can acknowledge your needs honestly, relationships become a source of support, rather than a substitute for self-trust. This work often involves grieving what you did not receive. Acknowledging that safety was missing can bring up sadness, anger, or loss. These feelings are part of healing, not a sign that you are stuck. Allowing space for them, rather than rushing past them, helps integrate past experiences instead of letting them quietly control present reactions. Over time, internal safety changes how you interpret the world. Situations that once felt threatening may still be challenging, but they no longer feel overwhelming in the same way. You begin to trust that you can respond thoughtfully, rather than reactively. This trust reduces fear of emotional pain, because you know you have ways to care for yourself through it. Becoming a safe place for yourself does not erase the past, but it changes your relationship with it. The absence of safety earlier in life does not limit your capacity to experience it now. Through repeated, compassionate responses to yourself, you create an internal environment that supports growth, rather than survival alone. This process unfolds gradually, reshaping how you experience emotions, relationships, and challenges in ways that reflect choice and care, rather than fear. Safety is not something life gives us once and for all. It is something we learn to create, moment by moment, in the way we speak to ourselves, respect our limits, and respond when things feel hard. You don't have to be unbreakable, perfectly healed, or free from pain to be safe. What matters is knowing that when life challenges you, you will meet yourself with steadiness instead of criticism. Over time, this becomes trust, and trust becomes the place where breaking no longer feels like the end, but something you can move through.